Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1025 for October 8th, 2023. Coming up in a few minutes.
When I first tasted a single malt, and I was, quite homesick, thinking about Scotland, and instantly I had this amazing reaction to it, and it conjured up all the things I love about Scotland, and it made me very homesick, but also transported me back.
Sam Heughan is best known for his role on TV's Outlander, but the native Scotsman is a whiskey nerd through and through. A couple of years ago, he decided to create his own whiskey brand, the Sassenach. I'll talk with Sam Heughan later on WhiskyCast In-Depth. And we'll also hear from Owen Martin, the new master distiller for Angel's Envy Bourbon. He just unveiled this year's cask strength versions of Angel's Envy. And I did mean to say versions. There's a rye as well as a cask strength bourbon this year. That's just ahead, along with my tasting notes in the What I'm Tasting This Week department, behind the label, and much more. The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast.
How about a really great 12-year-old Scotch whiskey? I have a stellar recommendation coming up for you in just a minute. Spoiler alert, it's Dewar's 12-year-old.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
Ever wondered where Redbreast got its name? Well, let's go back to 1912 and be glad our bird-watching founder didn't spot the bar-tailed godwit that day.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
Let's get started with the news. It's brought to you by the Dalmore. Pernod Ricard announced plans this week for the company's first distillery on Islay. Assuming planning approval is granted, the distillery will be built on Gartbreck Farm near the town of Beaumont. That site may sound familiar to longtime listeners. It's where French distiller Jean Donnet had planned to build a distillery about a decade ago, but his plans fell through. The distillery would be the 12th on Islay, counting all of the projects that are either under construction or in the planning process. The company pledged to make more details of the project available in the coming weeks. In addition, Compass Box is floating plans to build its first distillery. The Herald reports that Compass Box has applied to Highlands Council for planning permission to build a distillery near Fort William on the Inverlochie Castle estate. Compass Box founder John Glazer did not return our request for more information this week. Last month, we previewed the Distillers Charities One of One auction. The auction was held Thursday at Hopetoun House near Edinburgh and raised £2.2 million. That's nearly double what the auctioneers at Sotheby's had estimated before the auction. The high bid was the 55-year-old Beaumont Stack, which brought a hammer price of £562,500, while a one-of-a-kind 50-year-old Brora from 1972 sold for £400,000. The next one-of-one auction will be held in 2025. A couple of whiskeys made their world debuts during the auction. We heard about Deval Gandhi's Candleblanc Aga last month. It brought a high bid of £45,000. And bottle number one of Holyrood Distillery's Arrival 2019 single malt went for £10,000. By the way, Arrival is now on sale through the Holyrood website. You will pay a lot less for it, £67 a bottle. It'll be several years before we see whiskey from Scotland's newest whiskey distillery. The Stirling Distillery in Stirling has been producing gin for the last 4 years, but did its initial mash of Scotch whiskey this week. Congratulations. New whiskies out this week. The Macallan is releasing the latest edition in its Fine and Rare series. The Fine and Rare 1997 was matured in a first-fill sherry-seasoned European oak cask for 26 years. There's no word on pricing. Chivas's Royal Salute has released its second collaboration with British designer Richard Quinn. He helped create the blend with Chivas master blender Sandy Hislop. It comes in a 3-bottle set, with one of the bottles to be available exclusively in global travel retail. The other 2 will be available at select retailers worldwide with a recommended retail price of $222 a bottle. Torveg Distillery on Scotland's Isle of Skye has released the final chapter in its Legacy series with Altglen Cask Strength. The whiskey was distilled during the distillery's early years in 2017 and 2018 with peated barley and is peated to 78 parts per million of phenols. It carries a recommended retail price of $89 a bottle in the U.S. I received a sample this week, and I'll have my tasting notes for it soon at the WhiskyCast website. Proximo's Tin Cup Whiskey is releasing the second in its annual series of limited edition 14-year-old whiskeys celebrating Colorado's 14,000-foot mountains. The 14er highlights Quandary Peak, one of the most popular 14er hikes in Colorado. It goes on sale this Wednesday through the Tin Cup website. Blue Run Spirits is releasing a new 8-year-old double rickhouse bourbon. The whiskey is the same bourbon featured in Blue Run's recent Trifecta release, with an extra 2 years of aging in Bardstown. The Blue Run 8-year-old single-barrel bourbon is available for $249.99 a bottle. Cava Zemanian of Rabbit Hole and Pernod Ricard are teaming up on yet another new whiskey release. Mash and Mellow is a s'mores-flavored whiskey that Zemanian calls bold, simple, and irreverent. It carries a recommended retail price of $32.99 a bottle. Bob Dylan's Heaven's Door Spirits is launching Homesick Blues Minnesota Wheated Bourbon. It's a tribute to Dylan's birthplace of Duluth, Minnesota, and comes as a new biography of Bob Dylan is being released on October 24th. A limited edition bundle featuring both the book and the whiskey is now available for pre-orders through the Heaven's Door website. And finally, when a big spirits company buys a minority stake in a craft distiller, it usually leads to a complete takeover down the road. That's not the case this time. Catoctin Creek Distilling co-founders Scott and Becky Harris have bought back the stake they sold to Constellation Brands 7 years ago. The deal will allow the Harrises to focus on their distilling operations. Congratulations. You can keep up with the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. The news is brought to you by the Dalmore.
Hello, Richard Patterson here, Master Distiller, Master Blender for the Dalmore. You know, whenever the team and I are in the world sharing our exceptional single malt, we like to keep in touch with Mark Gillespie and the latest news from WhiskyCast.
I wanted to take just a second to point you to a new feature of our WhiskyCast community app, Whiskey Education. My partner Christina and I have been working on a whiskey book for the last decade or so, and we decided to turn it into an interactive course that's available on the app. Check out the craft and adventure of whiskey in the app today. You can download the app from the Apple or Google app stores and join the conversation with whiskey lovers just like you all over the world. Time now for the calendar and our look at upcoming whiskey events around the world. Edinburgh's Whiskey Festival is this coming Saturday, October 14th in Edinburgh, Scotland. The Chicago Indie Spirits Expo is Monday night the 16th. The Manchester Whiskey Festival is October 20th and 21st in Manchester, England. Whiskey Live Paris is October 21st through the 23rd. And Sagamore Spirit Distillery's final Whiskey on the Waterfront party of the year will be on the 21st. The Fraser History Museum in Louisville, Kentucky presents Life of the Barrel with Lexington Brewing and Distilling on October 26th. Whiskey Fest San Francisco is on the 27th, and the Dornoch Whiskey Festival runs from October 27th through the 29th in Dornoch, Scotland. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendar at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
A thoughtful gift is hard work. What you need is a go-to multi-purpose gift for all occasions. A bottle of Redbreast can say, "Enjoy every minute, they grow up so fast." Oh. And equally nails, "Apologies for the back pain, I should have just hired a moving company."
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Mortlock and the Classic Malts lineup. Sam Heughan is best known for his role as Jamie on TV's Outlander, and for Men in Kilts, his romps around Scotland with fellow Outlander star Graham McTavish. He's also a longtime whiskey lover who could have put his name and face on any number of whiskeys, but decided instead to create his own blended scotch, the Sassenach. Sam was the keynote speaker at Wednesday's Keepers of the Quake USA chapter dinner in New York City, and we spent a few minutes chatting before the dinner. So, first of all, welcome to WhiskyCast, Sam.
Thank you for having me. We're in an amazing library here at the Metropolitan Club in New York. It's fantastic.
What prompted you to start the Sassenach in the first place?
Well, now you're asking. So, I guess going back in time, my love for whiskey really grew when I was away from Scotland. I was living in London as a jobbing actor. I was working abroad as well, in America a lot, and I guess the first time really that was when I first tasted a single malt, and I was quite homesick thinking about Scotland, and instantly I had this amazing reaction to it, and it conjured up all the things I love about Scotland, and it made me very homesick but also transported me back to Scotland. And I guess cut 2 years later I become a whiskey enthusiast, let's say, and I was working in Scotland on Outlander, the TV show that I do, and I was approached by a number of distilleries and bottlers to put my name on a bottle, but I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to, I guess, create something that is a reputation of what I love about Scotland and about Scottish whiskey. So our brand Sassenach is all self-financed, self-designed, from the logo to the juice inside. It really is a labour of love, and one that I've been thoroughly enjoying.
I have to ask, did you get the troubles in Germany straightened out?
Well, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to talk about it, but not as yet. We did fall into an issue with the name Sassenach, which was similar to a big brand in the US, in Germany, of a beer brand. I personally don't see the similarity, but I'm sure once people taste our whiskey, they'll know what it is, whatever the name is on it.
I had a question from a listener who would like to have a cask strength version of the Sassenach available.
Wow, yeah. I think that's not the first person to say that. It's 46%. I wanted it a higher ABV on it. I love cask strength whiskies, and I think we're going to be tasting a few of those tonight, but I love the weight, the alcohol, the feel on the tongue. And I do like to taste whiskies when they're at cask strength, and then add a little bit of water, let it open up, taste the other notes in it. But yeah, of course, we're working on a lot of different things. As I said, we're self-financed. We're a very small company. We're growing slowly. We're now available in 44 states in the US, and we're growing a lot. But down the line, of course, we've got some great ideas. We've just released our gin, which has done very well. But I would like to play around as well.
Do you play around and actually do the blending yourself, or do you have someone working with you?
Yeah, well, we both, I would say. My kitchen is like a mad laboratory, and we just went through the creation of the gin, and that in particular I was very much involved in. We went and distilled over 20, 30 botanicals individually, and I had them all in little bottles at home, and I was playing around with tasting blends of them. So that's kind of the process that we did with the gin on over a long extended period. But Michael Hendry was our master blender for the whiskey, and I could never be able to do what he does. Of course, not even think about it. But it was so fun to work with him because we talked about what I love about whiskey. So I'm a huge fan of aged single grains. So we went down that road first. We've used a 19-year-old organic grain. We then added a 12 and a 9-year-old single malts in there. And I love rich fruits. I love a lot of flavor profile from that. So we aged it in Madeira cask. But yeah, working with him, with someone who's got an infinitely more developed palate, who can taste things that I would never even notice, is incredible. So he really guided me through that process.
What did you learn from him?
Don't always swallow, I guess. I'm always so tempted to drink everything, and we had so many different permutations, and by the end of a long tasting you can't even remember where you started. But no, he's a font of knowledge, and just really interesting as well how he used to listen to what I would say and go away, and I'd sort of give him time, and he'd come back maybe a week or two later and with some different samples, and he'd also put things in there in the process to sort of almost test me as well, I think, to see whether if we were going in the right direction. He might put one tester in there that's come with something completely different, just to see what I felt about it. But I think we really covered every base, and he really came up with the goods. It's as I said, also a multi-award-winning whiskey. It's done, I believe, it's the most awarded whiskey in its category. We just won Best Blended Scotch at the New York Spirit Awards. It's also a finalist in Best in Show, so it's done phenomenally well.
You said 44 states. We had a question from a listener in Rhode Island who has not been able to find it yet. Oh. And I have to admit, I have not seen it in New Jersey, in my part of New Jersey yet.
Yeah, well, as I said, we are online. Obviously, you can get it online. We've just signed a deal with Southern Glaziers, so we're rolling it out. It is a limited batch, so every year we do a release, and it is very limited, so it does tend to sell out pretty quick, but yes, it is available. I know it's available in New Jersey. There are a couple of stores in New Jersey that sell it. You will be able to see it more, but obviously you're not going to see it in every bar and restaurant or retailer because we just don't have enough of it, but online you can get it, and great delivery service. It's very quick.
I have to mention your show, Men in Kilts, that you do with Graham McTavish. You visited a bunch of distilleries during that one. Any visit in particular stand out?
We did. We went to Islay, and I had a bit of a relationship with Lefroy before, and knew the manager there, John Campbell. He's gone now to, he's now at, is it? Oh God, he's started the new distillery in Ayrshire. The name of it escapes me, but a great distillery. And Lefroy, obviously, I'm a huge fan of smoked whiskies as well, or smoky whiskies. But it's such an incredible process. If you haven't been, to your listeners, you must go. It's this beautiful little island, very few trees, obviously a lot of peat, and just that experience to go there, to see the ovens, to see the malting floor, is really very, very special. And then when you get to go into their warehouse there, and you see these casks that are aging on the side of the water, and the North Sea air is getting to them, and it's something very much about the situation, the terroir, like sitting there drinking this smoky whiskey. It nothing beats it.
Well, thank you for joining us, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
I'll have my tasting notes for the Sassenach in just a few minutes. Now, Owen Martin isn't a celebrity. He recently left Stranahan's distillery in Denver to take on the role of master distiller for Angel's Envy Bourbon in Louisville, Kentucky. He's a rising star, though, and Owen just unveiled this year's Angel's Envy Cask Strength Editions, a bourbon, and for the first time, a rye. We talked a couple of weeks ago at the launch party in New York City before Owen went on paternity leave. Tell me about the decision to move to Angel's Envy from Stranahan's.
Yeah, so after about 6.5 years of being at Stranahan's, I'd worked my way up the line there. Started all the way from night distiller to overseeing fermentation to R&D, then eventually head distiller, then eventually head distiller and production manager. A lot of what I was doing there in terms of experimentation was with cask finishing. So I think when you frame it that way, to move to Angel's Envy makes perfect sense. So when that job came up, it seemed like, meant to be. And so we hopped in, and just about a year ago moved to Louisville.
How's the move been?
It's been fantastic. I mean, I guess we tried to sell our house in Denver the week that interest rates spiked, so that was a little bit difficult, but Louisville itself has been, I would say, welcomed us with open arms. Angel's Envy's had people from all over the country been hired, from Portland, from Minneapolis, from Austin, and so we fell in with a great group, not to mention the wider bourbon community with Heaven Hill, with Beam, and all the other friends we've made in town. So it truly has blown us away.
Give me a sense between blending and distilling for Stranahan's versus blending and distilling for Angel's Envy.
Sure. Well, I mean, on the basic level, it's pot distillation versus column distillation, malt whiskey versus bourbon and rye whiskey, and then the scale of production's a decent bit bigger. And then having all the core expressions be finished, has its own inventory benefits and challenges to that with palletized warehousing and ricked warehousing. But, I mean, it's been an amazing learning experience, and really I truly feel like this brand is off to the races.
What was the hardest part about making the transition, besides selling your house in Denver?
Yeah, I mean, I think the network of friends that we've made in Denver, the community, the distilling and brewing communities in Denver are tight-knit, but it's now just finding myself in another tight-knit community, albeit probably even a bigger one in Kentucky. So luckily with Bourbon Women, with that conference a couple weeks ago, we had friends come in that we had seen since we moved from Colorado and other friends we hadn't seen since before COVID. So, once you're in the whiskey community, no one's ever truly too far away.
For those who aren't familiar with your background, give us the CV.
Yeah, I've gotten pretty good at my elevator pitch. So I'm from Kansas City originally. I was doing an engineering degree and got into brewing there a little bit with Boulevard Brewing Company. Interning, finished up engineering, knew that wasn't the route I wanted to go, so started looking at brewing schools. In retrospect, this was kind of the height of craft beer in the U.S., so all the brewing schools were waitlisted and super expensive. So started looking abroad and found a actual master's degree in brewing and distilling science at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, Scotland. So packed up my bags and moved there. And as I say, living in Scotland, it didn't take too long to move to the whiskey side of things. So I did my thesis with a lowland distillery there, studying stillage. So about as unsexy as you can do in the whiskey industry, but cut my teeth. Moved straight back from Scotland to Arkansas, where I worked at a small distillery there for a couple years. And eventually a friend from Scotland clued me into a job at Sassenach in Denver. So I moved there in 2016, again starting on night shift distilling. And up from 2016 until last fall, I worked my way up there. And as of October of last year, found myself in Louisville working for Angel's Envy.
And that small distillery in Arkansas was Rocktown, right?
Rocktown, yeah. So we just saw that Fred Minnick picked a barrel from them, and Phil Brandon showed me that it was one of the last barrels that I distilled while I was at Rocktown.
What do you hope to accomplish at Angel's Envy?
I think it's just finishing forward, doing it in innovative and authentic ways, and kind of finding my own voice with the company. Again, not trying to rock the boat with our core expressions, but trying to push the envelope on what the special releases are, maintain the quality as we grow, and keep doing things that surprise people.
Tell me about the Cask Strength editions.
Absolutely. So it's the 12th annual release of our Cask Strength Bourbon, and the first one I blended. So one of the first things I did when I got to Angel's Envy was review our inventories, right? So of finished whiskey, of unfinished bourbons and ryes, what's down, what do I have available? And so I found lots of barrels that I really liked, some 9-year-old bourbon that had been finished for a couple years in multi-use port barrels, and I wanted to layer on top of that. So I found some 2016 Angel's Envy distillate, some of the first stuff to come off the still in fall of 2016, and waited until I found the right port barrels to complement that. It was very heavy oak, very spicy, and so I felt that it could balance out with some first fill port barrels. So those got filled in December of last year. And then the third major piece was me picking through our single barrel program. So bless the single barrel supervisor. He got used to me basically cherry picking his favorite barrels for the last year. And with those 3 pieces in place, I actually married all this whiskey back in May. And the volume was big enough. It's about 100 barrels. The volume was big enough I couldn't just keep that in a stainless tank for the duration of time. So what I did was I married it and then put it right back into the barrels it came out of and let that marry through the Kentucky summer. And as expected, those barrels changed a little bit through the summer, but obviously we stayed on top of that and continued to iterate our blends right up to the last minute, and we're pretty happy with what we came out with. I think it's a really well-balanced whiskey for the proof it's at. It has, we haven't lost that core bourbon character, but that port's there in a nice, spicy, rich sense. And it's at 118.2 proof, so the lowest proof we've ever done for cask strength, which I think actually even drinks well under that. So, as far as a fairly high proof offering, I think it's actually pretty approachable.
And you did a cask strength rye for the first time.
I did, yeah. So I guess the line I've been using, I like to think that if Angel's Envy took something familiar, bourbon, and added port finishing to it back in the day, which was pretty revolutionary for the time, what I wanted to do was take something that's familiar to our Angel's Envy's fans, right? So the cask strength bourbon, and then put my own spin on that. So wanted to surprise people with a cask strength rye. Everyone's going to expect the cask strength bourbon to release, but we're going to surprise them with a double release this, first week of December.
How do you satisfy the fans while being creative?
Yeah, I think I started out as a whiskey nerd before I was a whiskey maker, so I think I'm a little in touch with that, but I think you ultimately just have to make whiskey that you like, but also things that are going to, I'm not necessarily looking for something that's hazmat, that is 140 proof. I want to make something that makes that crowd happy, but I also want to make something that makes me and the wider general whiskey consumers happy as well. So overall, I'm just looking for balance, I guess. And in anything I'm blending, I want to keep the port influence in there with the oak and the amount of distillate and grain character all in ratio. And so it's important for me, no matter what I'm blending, to just make sure that everything has balance and harmony amongst all its components.
How important is it to you to stay consistent with what Wes Henderson did for the first 11, 12 years of Angel's Envy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super important. I don't want to rock the boat and disillusion all our super fans, right? So I would say there's kind of two parts of my job, and the first one of which is upholding the quality of the core releases as we scale, especially as we scale. And the second one is the, flashier part, I guess, which is to do special releases like this and put a little bit of my own spin on where we go from here.
Anything else you can add I didn't ask about?
No, you're all good. Thank you, Mark. I guess I would just say that I came back from Scotland, and I would drive back from Arkansas to Kansas City, and I'd save up whiskey casks and listen to them. And so it's a huge honor to be on here because this is how I cut my teeth, was listening to you every week as I was making whiskey and just started my career. So thank you.
Thank you, Owen. The Angel's Envy Cask Strength Bourbon and Rye will be available starting December 1st at retailers. The rye will carry a recommended retail price of $269.99 a bottle, while the bourbon is priced at $229.99. That's WhiskyCast In-Depth, brought to you by Mortlach, whiskey's best-kept secret. Hidden away for decades in some of the world's most famous Scotch whiskies, comes a single malt inspired by an original for a fortunate few. Discover the entire Mortlach lineup at malts.com. Let's start off the What I'm Tasting This Week department with the Angel's Envy Cask Strength Bourbon. Once again, it's bottled at 59.1% ABV, and the nose has touches of milk chocolate, fresh berries, plums, toasted caramel, and red grapes. The taste has notes of dark fruits, white pepper, and cinnamon. The spices fade to reveal fresh berries, red grapes, honey, and vanilla. The finish is long with lingering spices, and I'm scoring the Angel's Envy Cask Strength Bourbon a 94. Next up, the first ever Angel's Envy Cask Strength Rye. This one is bottled at 57.2% ABV, and the nose has baking spices, dried flowers, orange marmalade, and a touch of toasted oak. The taste starts off with spicy notes of clove, cinnamon, and allspice that fade slowly to reveal dried flowers, orange marmalade, honey, and vanilla. The finish is very long with lingering touches of allspice, dried flowers, and honey. I'm scoring the 2023 Angel's Envy Cask Strength Rye a 95. Moving on, let's look at the Sassenach blended Scotch from Sam Heughan's Sassenach Spirits. It's bottled at 46% ABV. The nose is malty and honey sweet with touches of red apples, peaches, pears, and a hint of seaweed. The taste is peppery with a touch of barley sugar, grilled pineapple, citrus fruits, honey, and vanilla. The finish, long and malty with a touch of spice, and I'm scoring the Sassenach blended Scotch a 93. Finally, Chivas Regal is out with a new 15-year-old blended Scotch, the Chivas Regal XV, with a heavy cognac cask influence. It's bottled at 40% ABV, and the nose has touches of dark fruits, red grapes, and a hint of apricots. The taste is light and fruity with apricots, red grapes, fresh berries, and subtle spices that come alive leading into the finish, which is long with those subtle spices and a lingering fruitiness. I'm scoring the Chivas Regal XV an 89. I've added these tasting notes to our searchable list of more than 3,500 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at whiskycast.com.
Gabriel here. The new Dewar's 12-year-old has been completely remastered to be richer, smoother, and more balanced. It's a total winner. It's double-aged in first-fill premium bourbon casks for greater depth and breadth of flavor, with notes of apples, lemon zest, and spicy and floral notes with a long, smooth vanilla finish. The experts agree, too. It's winning awards like Pros Sync Putts. In fact, WhiskyCast's own Mark Gillespie gave it a 94-point rating, which is pretty amazing for a 12-year-old Scotch. It's also earned a 94-point rating from Whiskey Advocate, That makes it their highest-rated 12-year-old Scotch whiskey. It's an excellent testament to the skill, craft, and refinement of the world's most awarded blended Scotch whiskey, Dewar's. Drink responsibly. Copyright 2023 Dewar's Blended Scotch Whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
Let's open up the WhiskyCast community app now and see what people are talking about this week. Our community segment is brought to you by Waterford Whiskey. Had several comments on Pernod Ricard's plans for a new distillery on Islay. Once again, it would be the island's 12th distillery if planning approval is granted. Christopher Glenn shared this comment in the WhiskyCast community app. Is there any concern over freshwater availability? 12 distilleries concentrated on a small island will use a lot. A quick Google map shows just 4 rivers and a handful of lochs. And Rick at the Whiskey Zone added this. It feels like a bit of a free-for-all on Islay at the moment. Not sure what the council is doing at those approval meetings, but somebody better be talking about building another ferry and improving the roads on the island, in my opinion. Thanks for sharing that, guys. And looking at the dozen or so Glencairn glasses on my desk, I decided to ask a poll question the other day. How many Glencairn glasses do you have at home? Well, 37% said 1 to 10, 21% said 10 to 20, just 11% said 20 to 30, but 32% said 30 or more. So, how many do you have? I don't even want to try to count all of mine. Join the conversation by downloading the free WhiskyCast community app from the Apple or Google app stores. You can also get in touch with us on Threads, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Our community segment is presented by Waterford Whiskey, where they explore the frontiers of natural flavor one farm at a time to create unique Irish whiskeys. Visit them on the web at waterfordwhiskey.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. Got my copy of the 2024 Malt Whiskey Yearbook this week, and looking through the statistics section shows some interesting data. For instance, Indian whiskeys make up 4 of the top 5 best-selling whiskeys in the world, led by Diageo's McDowell's No. 1, with nearly 31 million cases sold in 2022. Pernod Ricard's Royal Stag was second, followed by Allied Blenders and Distillers' Officer's Choice, and Pernod Ricard's Imperial Blue. All 4 are largely domestic Indian whiskeys legally referred to as Indian-made foreign liquor. Johnny Walker rounds out the top 5, followed by Jack Daniels and Jameson. Finally, we know that Glenfiddich and the Glenlivet are in an arms race to build their production capacity. Every time one of the two expands, the other one seems to follow suit. Right now, they're tied for the largest distillery capacity among malt whiskey distillers worldwide at 21 million liters of alcohol per year. By comparison, the Dornoch and Moffat distilleries are Scotland's smallest. Each one produces just 12,000 liters of alcohol per year. The Thompson brothers, who own Dornoch Distillery, recently had planning permission granted to build a larger distillery on the edge of Dornoch. If you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this edition of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the whiskey photo of the week, and, of course, a complete archive of all of our past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us on X, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast, or you can use the WhiskyCast community app. Download it today from the Apple and Google app stores. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
Ever go out drinking with a peacock? Always the same. Few too many, tail feathers come out, drinks get knocked over, bartender's not happy, night's over before it started. All I'm saying is, don't be the peacock in your group.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
Find the new Dewar's 12-year-old and discover what all the awards are about. You can toast and thank me later. From Dewar's, the world's most awarded blended Scotch whiskey.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2023, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.